Sometimes the most powerful people walk among us in disguise, and sometimes the biggest mistakes happen when we judge someone by their appearance. In a world where military rank means everything and respect is earned through years of service, one young officer was about to shatter every assumption her colleagues had made about her. What started as an ordinary day at the base would end with 4 high-ranking colonels rushing across the compound, leaving everyone wondering who this rookie really was. This is the story of Lieutenant Sarah Chen, whose quiet demeanor hid secrets that would change everything in a matter of minutes. The truth has a way of revealing itself at the most unexpected moments, and when it does, it can turn an entire military base upside down.
Lieutenant Sarah Chen had been stationed at Fort Henderson for exactly 3 weeks, and in those 21 days, she had managed to become practically invisible.
While other junior officers made noise, sought attention, and tried to impress their superiors, Sarah moved through the base like a shadow. She arrived early, completed her assignments without fanfare, and left quietly at the end of each day. Major Rodriguez first noticed her during the morning briefings. She sat in the back row, always prepared, always taking notes, but never speaking unless directly asked. When she did respond to questions, her answers were precise and thoughtful, but delivered in such a soft voice that some of the more boisterous officers had to strain to hear her. Rodriguez found himself wondering why someone so clearly intelligent chose to remain so inconspicuous. "Chen," he had called out during Tuesday's tactical planning session, "what's your assessment of the logistics report?" Sarah had looked up from her notebook, her dark eyes serious behind wire-rimmed glasses. "The supply chain analysis shows a 17% inefficiency in our current routing system, sir. Implementation of a hub-and-spoke model could reduce costs by approximately 20 to 3% while improving delivery times." The room had gone quiet. It was a sophisticated analysis that most lieutenants wouldn't have thought to make, let alone articulate so clearly. But before anyone could respond, Sarah had returned to her notes, effectively ending the moment. Rodriguez made a mental note to keep an eye on her. There was something about Lieutenant Chen that didn't quite fit the typical profile of a fresh academy graduate. Her uniforms were always impeccable, her bearing professional, but there was an understated confidence in her movements that suggested experience beyond her apparent years.
The other junior officers had their own opinions about the quiet lieutenant.
Second Lieutenant Martinez, who had graduated from West Point just 6 months earlier, found Sarah's reserved nature puzzling and slightly irritating.
"She acts like she's too good to talk to the rest of us," he complained to his roommate, Lieutenant Jackson, as they grabbed coffee in the mess hall.
"I've tried to include her in conversations, but she just gives these one-word answers and disappears." Jackson, who was more observant than his friend, had noticed different things about Sarah. "I don't think it's arrogance," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "Yesterday, I saw her helping Sergeant Williams with his computer problems. She fixed something in about 30 seconds that the IT guys couldn't figure out all week, and she didn't make a big deal about it or anything."
"That's exactly what I mean,"
Martinez insisted. "She knows all this stuff but never talks about it. It's weird." What neither of them knew was that Sarah had spent her lunch break that same day quietly reviewing personnel files and efficiency reports. Not because it was assigned to her, but because she genuinely cared about understanding how the base operated. She had identified several areas where small changes could significantly improve morale and effectiveness, but she kept her observations to herself. Experience had taught her that unsolicited advice from junior officers was rarely welcome. Captain Williams, who supervised the logistics department, had his own perspective on the new lieutenant. Sarah had been assigned to his unit, and while her work was exemplary, he found her almost eerily competent for someone so new to military service. She completed that inventory analysis in half the time I expected, he mentioned to his wife over dinner. And not just completed it, she found discrepancies that our regular auditors missed. Either we've got a prodigy on our hands, or there's more to her story than what's in her file.
His wife, a former military officer herself, raised an eyebrow.
What does her file say? Standard stuff. Good grades at the academy, no prior military experience.
"Parents are civilians."
But something doesn't add up. Yesterday she was explaining supply chain protocols to me like she'd been doing it for years. New lieutenants usually take months to grasp concepts she seems to understand intuitively. The truth was, Sarah's file told only part of her story. What it didn't mention was that her civilian father was Dr. James Chen, one of the country's leading experts in military logistics and strategy, who had spent Sarah's childhood consulting for the Pentagon. What it didn't mention was that Sarah had grown up attending military functions, absorbing conversations about strategy and operations from some of the most brilliant military minds in the country. What it definitely didn't mention was that her mother was General Patricia Chen, one of only a handful of women to achieve 4-star rank, who had chosen to keep her daughter's military career separate from her own.
Influences day late 2011 nearly 100 times passed through the top high nation tentis to eventually.
General Chen had made a difficult decision when Sarah entered the academy. She would not use her position to advance her daughter's career, and she would not reveal their relationship unless absolutely necessary. Sarah carried this secret burden alone, knowing that her every action was scrutinized not just as a junior officer, but as the daughter of one of the most respected generals in the military.
She had chosen to serve, but she was determined to earn her place through merit alone, without the advantages or complications that her mother's rank might bring. This careful balance had worked well during her academy years, where her exceptional performance could be attributed to natural ability and hard work.
But now, in the real military environment, her deep understanding of military culture and protocol was harder to explain away. On Thursday morning, that delicate balance was tested when Colonel Harrison, the base commander, unexpectedly visited the logistics department during Sarah's shift.
She was working at her desk when she noticed the increased activity around her. Other officers straightening their uniforms, conversations stopping mid-sentence, the subtle signs of a high-ranking visit. When Colonel Harrison entered the room, Sarah stood at attention like everyone else, but she didn't crane her neck to get a better look or whisper to her colleagues about the surprise inspection.
She had been around senior officers her entire life, and while she respected the colonel's rank, his presence didn't fill her with the same nervous energy that affected her peers. Colonel Harrison spent several minutes reviewing ongoing projects with Captain Williams before his attention turned to the various workstations.
He paused at Sarah's desk, noting the neat organization and the complex logistics analysis displayed on her computer screen. "Lieutenant Chen," he said, reading her nameplate. "Explain what you're working on." Sarah's response was calm and professional, without the nervous stammer that often characterized junior officers speaking to senior leadership. She walked him through her analysis clearly and concisely, answering his follow-up questions with the kind of depth that impressed even the colonel.
"Interesting approach," Colonel Harrison said after she finished. "Have you presented these findings to your supervisor?"
"Not yet, sir. I wanted to complete the full analysis before making any recommendations." The colonel nodded approvingly and moved on. But Sarah noticed that several of her colleagues were now looking at her with new interest.
Her interaction with the colonel had been notably confident, almost comfortable, in a way that stood out among junior officers.
Later that afternoon, Captain Williams approached her desk.
"That was good work with the colonel today, Chen. He was impressed."
"Thank you, sir."
"I'm curious about something, though."
"You seem very comfortable around senior officers. Most lieutenants get nervous when a colonel starts asking detailed questions about their work."
Sarah considered her response carefully. "I believe preparation and competence are the best ways to show respect for senior leadership, sir." It was a good answer, technically true, but it skirted the real reason for her comfort level.
Captain Williams seemed satisfied, but Sarah noticed he continued to watch her with curiosity over the following days. The weekend brought a temporary respite from the scrutiny. Sarah used her free time to explore the local area, finding a quiet cafe where she could read and think without the constant awareness of being observed and evaluated. She had chosen this path, but some days the weight of maintaining her careful balance felt overwhelming.
She thought about her mother, who had built her career during a time when women in the military faced even greater challenges than they did today. General Chen had never complained about the extra scrutiny, the need to work twice as hard for half the recognition, the careful navigation of military politics. She had simply excelled quietly and persistently until her competence became undeniable. Sarah was determined to follow a similar path, but she was beginning to realize that complete anonymity might not be possible. Her knowledge and skills, developed through a lifetime of exposure to military excellence, were difficult to hide. She would have to find a way to be exceptional without revealing the source of her expertise. As she returned to base Sunday evening, Sarah made a decision.
Perhaps by being more social, more like a typical lieutenant, she could deflect attention from the aspects of her background that raised questions.
It was a reasonable plan, but Sarah couldn't have predicted the events that would unfold in the coming week, events that would make her careful anonymity impossible to maintain.
Sometimes, despite our best efforts to control our circumstances, fate has other plans. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel sharper, more defined. Sarah arrived at her desk 15 minutes early, as was her habit, and began reviewing the weekend reports. The logistics department was responsible for coordinating a major supply convoy scheduled for Wednesday, and several last-minute complications had emerged that required immediate attention. She was deep in analysis when Lieutenant Martinez approached her desk, coffee in hand and a friendly smile on his face. Sarah looked up, surprised by the interruption. In the 3 weeks since her arrival, Martinez had made several attempts at conversation, but she had kept their interactions brief and professional. "Morning, Chen," he said, settling into the chair beside her desk.
"Busy already?" "Good morning, Martinez. Just reviewing the convoy logistics for Wednesday's operation."
"Mind if I ask you something?" Martinez leaned forward, his expression serious despite his casual tone. "Where'd you learn all this stuff? I mean, most of us are still figuring out basic protocols, but you seem to have it all figured out." Sarah felt the familiar tension that accompanied questions about her background. She had prepared for this conversation, but that didn't make it any easier.
"I spent a lot of time studying during academy,"
she said carefully, "and I find military logistics fascinating." "Come on," Martinez said with a laugh. "Nobody finds logistics that fascinating. Jackson thinks you might have prior military experience that's not in your file or something." Before Sarah could respond, Sergeant Williams burst into the office, his face flushed with urgency. "Lieutenant Chen, we've got a problem with the convoy route. Intelligence just reported possible hostile activity along Highway 7, and we need alternate routes mapped immediately." Sarah stood up, her mind already shifting into problem-solving mode. "What's the nature of the threat, Sergeant?" "Unconfirmed reports of explosive devices, ma'am. Command wants 3 alternate routes with full risk assessments within the hour." Martinez whistled low. "An hour? That's barely enough time to pull the maps, let alone analyze 3 different routes." But Sarah was already moving, her fingers flying across her keyboard as she pulled up digital maps and traffic analysis data. "Sergeant, I need current intelligence reports for highways 12, 15, and the back roads through Sector 7. Also, can you get me weather predictions and traffic density reports for Wednesday morning?" "Yes, ma'am." Sergeant Williams headed off to gather the requested information, leaving Martinez watching in amazement as Sarah's desk transformed into a command center. Within minutes, Sarah had multiple screens displaying maps, charts, and data streams. She worked with the focused intensity of someone who had done this type of analysis many times before, cross-referencing security reports with geographical data, calculating travel times and fuel consumption, assessing the tactical advantages and disadvantages of each potential route. Martinez pulled up a chair, fascinated by the speed and sophistication of Sarah's analysis. "How do you know to check all these different factors?" "Convoy safety depends on multiple variables," Sarah explained without looking up from her screens. "Weather affects visibility and road conditions. Traffic density impacts timing and exposure. Geographic features provide either cover or vulnerability. You have to consider everything simultaneously." As she spoke, Sarah realized she was drawing on knowledge that went far beyond what a new lieutenant should possess. Her father had walked her through similar analyses countless times during her childhood, explaining how military planners thought about risk assessment and tactical decision-making. Her mother had shared stories about convoy operations during her own deployment, emphasizing the critical importance of thorough planning. But there was no time to worry about revealing too much knowledge. Lives depended on getting this analysis right, and Sarah pushed aside her concerns about maintaining her cover as she focused on the task at hand. 25 minutes later, she had completed comprehensive analyses of 3 alternate routes, complete with detailed risk assessments, timing calculations, and contingency plans. She printed the reports and handed them to Sergeant Williams, who had returned with the additional intelligence data.
Here are your 3 options, Sergeant.
Route Alpha through Highway 12 has the lowest risk profile but adds 30 minutes to travel time. Route Bravo uses back roads with good cover but requires additional fuel stops. Route Charlie offers the fastest travel time but has limited escape options if the convoy encounters problems. Sergeant Williams scanned the reports, his eyebrows rising as he took in the level of detail. "Ma'am, this is really impressive work. How did you complete this so quickly?"
Just organized thinking, Sergeant. I need to get these to Captain Williams immediately.
He's in the command briefing room with the other senior staff. After Sergeant Williams left, Martinez stared at Sarah with undisguised amazement. "Okay, seriously? Who are you?" "That was the most professional tactical analysis I've ever seen, and you did it in less than half an hour." Sarah felt heat rising in her cheeks. She had let her competence show too clearly, revealed too much of her true capabilities.
"I just approach problems systematically, Martinez."
Anyone could do the same analysis with enough focus. "No way.
I've been trying to understand basic logistics protocols for months, and you just conducted an analysis that looked like something a major or lieutenant colonel would produce. That's not normal lieutenant-level work."
Before Sarah could respond, Captain Williams appeared in the doorway, holding her printed reports.
His expression was unreadable, but there was an intensity in his gaze that made Sarah's stomach clench with anxiety.
Why is that not ever happened?
Lieutenant Chen, could I speak with you privately? Martinez gathered his things and left, but not before giving Sarah a look that clearly said their conversation wasn't over. Sarah followed Captain Williams to his office, her mind racing through possible explanations for her unexpected display of expertise. Captain Williams closed the door and gestured for her to sit. He placed her reports on his desk and studied her for a long moment before speaking.
These are exceptional, Lieutenant.
The level of analysis, the attention to detail, the strategic thinking, this is the work of someone with significant experience in tactical planning.
Thank you, sir. That's not exactly a compliment, Chen. It's a question.
How does a lieutenant with no prior military experience produce work that rivals what I'd expect from officers with years of field experience? Sarah had prepared for this moment, but sitting in Captain Williams' office, faced with direct questioning from her superior, her carefully rehearsed explanation seemed inadequate. She could feel the careful facade she had maintained beginning to crumble.
Sir, I've always been interested in military strategy and logistics. I spent a lot of time studying during my academy years, and I approach problems analytically. This is the book. It's about history.
Captain Williams leaned back in his chair, his expression skeptical. Lieutenant, I've been in the military for 15 years. I've supervised dozens of new officers, and I know the difference between academic knowledge and practical understanding.
What you demonstrated today suggests hands-on experience that your file doesn't reflect.
The conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. Sergeant Williams entered, his face even more flushed than before. Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we've got an urgent situation. The convoy commander just called. They're requesting immediate tactical support for a possible engagement.
Intelligence reports had been updated, and the situation on Highway 7 has escalated.
Captain Williams stood immediately.
What kind of support do they need? Real-time route analysis and tactical recommendations, sir.
They're asking for someone who can coordinate with field operations and provide immediate strategic guidance.
Sarah felt her pulse quicken. This was exactly the type of situation where her background and training could make a real difference, but it was also the type of situation where her unusual competence would be impossible to hide. Captain Williams looked at Sarah, then at the reports on his desk, then back at Sarah. She could see him making a calculation, weighing his curiosity about her background against the immediate need for her skills. Lieutenant Chen, I'm assigning you to coordinate tactical support for this operation. You'll work directly with the convoy commander and provide real-time analysis and recommendations.
Yes, sir.
And Chen, Captain Williams added, his voice carrying a clear warning, we will be continuing our conversation about your background after this operation is complete.
Sarah nodded, knowing that her carefully maintained anonymity was about to end. But as she hurried to the communications center to begin coordinating with the convoy commander, she pushed aside her personal concerns and focused on the mission.
There would be time to deal with the consequences later. In the communications center, Sarah quickly established contact with Major Thompson, the convoy commander in the field. His voice crackled through the radio with tension and urgency. This is Convoy Alpha 7 requesting immediate tactical support.
Dell has been held.
We've got confirmed hostile activity ahead of our position, and our planned route is compromised. We need alternate routes and tactical recommendations immediately.
Sarah took a deep breath and activated her microphone. Convoy Alpha 7.
This is Lieutenant Chen at Base Operations. I have current intelligence and route analysis ready for your review.
As she began coordinating the real-time tactical support, Sarah felt a familiar sense of competence and purpose. This was what she had trained for, what she was genuinely good at regardless of how her knowledge had been acquired.
For the next several hours, she would focus on keeping the convoys safe and completing their mission successfully. Everything else would have to wait. The communications center hummed with tension as Sarah established herself at the primary coordination station. Multiple screens displayed real-time satellite feeds, intelligence reports, and tactical maps of the region where Convoy Alpha 7 was operating.
Major Thompson's voice continued to crackle through the radio system, reporting his unit's status as they held position 3 miles from the reported threat area.
Base operations, Convoy Alpha 7.
We've got eyes on suspicious activity, approximately 2 clicks ahead of our position. Request immediate guidance on alternate routes and tactical options. Sarah studied the digital maps overlaying current intelligence reports with geographical data and recent reconnaissance information. Her mind processed multiple variables simultaneously. Terrain features that could provide cover or create vulnerabilities.
weather conditions affecting visibility, the convoy's current fuel status, and the time constraints of their delivery schedule.
Convoy Alpha 7, I'm analyzing 3 potential options for you. Sarah responded, her voice steady despite the pressure. Stand by for detailed recommendations. Captain Williams entered the communications center, drawn by reports of the escalating situation.
He positioned himself where he could observe Sarah's coordination efforts without interfering. Other senior staff members followed, including Major Rodriguez and Lieutenant Colonel Patterson, the base deputy commander.
Sarah was aware of the growing audience, but forced herself to focus entirely on the tactical situation. She activated multiple communication channels, coordinating simultaneously with intelligence assets, weather stations, and logistic support units.
Intelligence operations, this is base coordination.
I need real-time updates on hostile activity in grid squares 247 through 251.
Also requesting aerial reconnaissance if available.
Base coordination, intelligence operations.
Confirming increased activity in grid square 249. Aerial assets are repositioning for better coverage. Estimate 5 minutes for updated visual reconnaissance. Sarah acknowledged the information while simultaneously calculating revised route options. Her fingers flew across the computer interface as she incorporated the new intelligence into her tactical analysis. Major Thompson's voice came through again, more urgent now.
I admit it. Sometimes I do.
Base operations, we're observing movement in our target area. Whatever recommendations you've got, we need them now. Sarah took a deep breath and activated her microphone.
Convoy Alpha 7, I have 3 recommended courses of action. Option 1, immediate withdrawal to position Charlie 4 and approach target via Route 15, south. This adds 47 minutes to your timeline but provides maximum security. Option 2, modified approach via grid squares 245 and 246 using natural cover features.
This maintains your current timeline but requires careful coordination.
Option 3, direct approach with enhanced security protocols and real-time intelligence support. What's your tactical assessment of Option 2? Base operations.
Sarah consulted her analysis, cross-referencing terrain data with current intelligence reports.
Option 2 provides good natural concealment through the first phase of approach. Grid Square 245 has elevation advantages and multiple egress routes. Risk level is moderate, but success depends on maintaining communication with intelligence assets.
Roger, base operations.
We're implementing Option 2. Request continuous tactical support during approach.
Dad, tell us about this issue. Ballots, will you cast this other?
Confirmed, Convoy Alpha 7. You'll have continuous coordination from this position. For the next hour, Sarah managed real-time tactical coordination with precision and confidence that impressed everyone in the communications center. She maintained constant communication with the convoy while simultaneously coordinating with intelligence units, weather services, and backup support assets.
Her analysis was thorough, her recommendations were clear, and her communication was professional and calm under pressure.
Lieutenant Colonel Patterson moved closer to observe Sarah's work. As the base deputy commander, he had extensive experience evaluating officer performance under pressure.
What he observed was exceptional tactical coordination from an officer whose file indicated no prior field experience. "Captain Williams," he said quietly, "how long has Lieutenant Chen been coordinating field operations?" Captain Williams glanced at Sarah, who was completely focused on her coordination duties.
This is her first tactical coordination assignment, sir. She's been here 3 weeks. Lieutenant Colonel Patterson raised an eyebrow.
3 weeks? Her coordination skills suggest significantly more experience than that. Before Captain Williams could respond, Sarah's voice cut through their conversation as she addressed the convoy.
Convoy Alpha 7. Intelligence reports indicate possible movement in grid square 246.
Recommend immediate shift to contingency route. Bravo 2.
Roger, base operations. Implementing route shift.
How does this affect our timeline? Sarah consulted her calculations. Route shift adds 12 minutes to approach time but maintains all delivery schedule requirements. New route provides better defensive positions and multiple backup options. Confirmed, base operations. Excellent work. Major Rodriguez joined Lieutenant Colonel Patterson and Captain Williams near the coordination station.
It's WOOO.
As the officer responsible for tactical training, he was particularly interested in Sarah's performance.
Her communication protocols are textbook perfect, he commented quietly. But more than that, her tactical thinking shows genuine understanding of field operations. New lieutenants usually require months of training to develop that level of operational awareness. Lieutenant Colonel Patterson nodded, his expression thoughtful. I've been watching her coordinate this operation for over an hour. Her decision-making process. Her ability to process multiple information streams simultaneously. Her understanding of tactical priorities. This isn't academic knowledge. This is practical experience. The conversation was interrupted by renewed activity from the convoy's position. Major Thompson's voice carried increased urgency as he reported changing conditions in the field.
Base operations, we've got confirmed hostile contact. Request immediate tactical guidance and backup support options.
Sarah's response was immediate and decisive. Convoy Alpha 7, confirm your current grid position and status of personnel.
Current position grid square 245.
North, all personnel accounted for. Light contact, no casualties. Requesting guidance on engagement protocols and extraction options if needed. Sarah's fingers moved rapidly across her interface as she pulled up detailed tactical data for the convoy's specific position. She analyzed terrain features, calculated fields of fire, evaluated cover options, and assessed the tactical advantages of various response options. Convoy Alpha 7, you have excellent defensive positioning in your current location. Grid square 245. North provides natural cover with elevation advantage and multiple egress routes. Recommend maintaining current position while I coordinate backup support. Sarah immediately opened communication channels with additional support units. Base Command, this is Coordination Center. Convoy Alpha 7 is engaged and requesting backup support. Recommend immediate deployment of QRF to grid squares 244 and 247 for tactical support. Lieutenant Colonel Patterson stepped forward and activated his own microphone. Coordination Center, this is Deputy Base Commander. Confirm your recommendation for quick reaction force deployment. Sarah consulted her tactical display and responded without hesitation. Sir, QRF deployment to grid squares 244 and 247 would provide flanking support for the convoy's current position while maintaining flexibility for multiple tactical options. Estimated deployment time is 18 minutes for optimal positioning. Approved. Deploy QRF as recommended. Sarah coordinated the complex operation with multiple units while maintaining continuous communication with the convoy. She managed information flows, provided tactical guidance, and coordinated timing for several simultaneous operations. Her performance was flawless, displaying the kind of tactical competence typically developed through years of field experience. Major Thompson's voice came through after 20 minutes of complex maneuvering. Base operations, hostile contact has been neutralized. Mission objectives remain on schedule. Outstanding tactical coordination and support. Roger. Convoy Alpha 7, confirm your status and requirements for continued mission support. All personnel accounted for, no casualties. Continuing with original mission timeline using your recommended route modifications. 77. Request continued coordination support until objective completion. Confirmed! Convoy Alpha 7! Coordination support will continue until mission completion. As the immediate crisis phase ended, the communications center began returning to normal operations. Sarah continued coordinating with the convoy, but the intense pressure of the emergency phase had passed. It was only then that she became fully aware of the senior officers who had gathered to observe her performance. Lieutenant Colonel Patterson approached her coordination station. Lieutenant Chen, that was exceptional tactical coordination. Your performance during that operation was outstanding. Thank you, sir. I have some questions about your background and experience that I'd like to discuss after you complete convoy coordination.
Sarah felt her stomach clench with anxiety.
The tactical emergency had required her to use skills and knowledge that clearly exceeded what would be expected from a new lieutenant. Her careful efforts to maintain anonymity had been completely abandoned during the crisis, and now she would face questions she wasn't prepared to answer.
Yes, sir. Captain Williams, please ensure Lieutenant Chen reports to my office immediately after convoy completion.
Yes, sir. As the senior officers departed, Sarah continued her coordination duties, but her mind was racing with concern about the upcoming conversation.
She had performed excellently under pressure, possibly saving lives and ensuring mission success. But in doing so, she had revealed capabilities that would inevitably lead to questions about her true background. The convoy operation continued for another 2 hours, proceeding smoothly under Sarah's continued coordination.
Major Thompson expressed gratitude for the outstanding tactical support, and the mission was completed successfully without further incidents.
But as Sarah prepared to report to Lieutenant Colonel Patterson's office, she knew that her carefully maintained anonymity was about to end.
The questions waiting for her would require answers she wasn't prepared to give, and the consequences might change everything about her military career. Sarah stood outside Lieutenant Colonel Patterson's office, her hand raised to knock on the door, when she heard voices inside.
Through the slight gap under the door, she could make out the conversation happening within.
Her tactical coordination was exceptional, Lieutenant Colonel Patterson was saying, but exceptional in a way that doesn't match her file or her supposed experience level. I've been noticing inconsistencies for weeks, Captain Williams replied. Her work consistently exceeds what I'd expect from a new lieutenant, and today's performance was at the level of a seasoned major or lieutenant colonel.
What exactly are you suggesting?
This was a voice Sarah didn't recognize, likely another senior officer who had been called in for the discussion. I'm suggesting we have an officer whose capabilities significantly exceed her documented background, Lieutenant Colonel Patterson said.
Which raises questions about what we don't know about Lieutenant Chen. Sarah took a deep breath and knocked firmly on the door.
Enter, Lieutenant Colonel Patterson called.
Sarah stepped into the office and came to attention. Lieutenant Colonel Patterson sat behind his desk, with Captain Williams to his left and a colonel she didn't recognize seated in a chair near the window.
The nameplate on his uniform read, Colonel Morrison. Lieutenant Chen, please have a seat. Lieutenant Colonel Patterson said, gesturing to the chair facing his desk. Sarah sat down, maintaining her professional posture despite the anxiety coursing through her system. She had prepared for this conversation for weeks, but facing 3 senior officers in a formal setting made her carefully rehearsed explanations seem inadequate.
Lieutenant, your performance during today's tactical coordination was outstanding, Lieutenant Colonel Patterson began. Major Thompson specifically requested that I commend you for exceptional support under pressure. Thank you, sir. However, your performance also raises questions.
The level of tactical competence you demonstrated suggests experience and training that don't appear in your personnel file.
Sarah had known this moment would come eventually, but she had hoped to establish herself more fully before facing direct questions about her background.
She chose her words carefully.
Sir, I've always been interested in military tactics and strategy.
I spent considerable time studying during my academy years.
Colonel Morrison leaned forward, his expression serious but not unfriendly. Lieutenant, I've been reviewing your academy records.
While your academic performance was excellent, there's a significant difference between academic knowledge and practical tactical competence. What you demonstrated today suggests hands-on experience.
I had excellent instructors at the academy, sir, and I approached my studies very systematically. Captain Williams spoke up.
Chen, we're not criticizing your performance.
Quite the opposite. But as your supervisor, I need to understand your actual capabilities so I can assign you appropriately. Today's coordination was at a level that suggests you've done this type of work before. Sarah felt the walls closing in around her carefully constructed anonymity.
These were experienced officers who understood the difference between academic preparation and practical competence.
Her explanations were technically true but clearly insufficient.
Lieutenant Colonel Patterson consulted a file on his desk. Your personnel record indicates that both your parents are civilians with no military background. Is that accurate? The direct question hit Sarah like a physical blow.
This was the moment she had been dreading, the point where maintaining her cover story would require an outright lie.
She had been truthful about her academic preparation and her systematic approach to learning, but she couldn't continue to deflect questions about her family background.
Sir, that information is
technically accurate but incomplete. Explain what you mean by technically accurate but incomplete. Sarah realized she had reached the point where partial truth was no longer sustainable. She would have to reveal enough of her real background to satisfy their questions, even though doing so would fundamentally change her military experience. Sir, my father is Dr. Pitakini, James Chen. He's a civilian, but he's also a Pentagon consultant specializing in military logistics and strategic planning. I grew up attending military functions and hearing discussions about tactical operations. The 3 officers exchanged glances.
Dr. James Chen was well known in military circles as one of the country's leading experts in logistics strategy.
His consulting work with the Pentagon had influenced military planning for over 2 decades.
Colonel Morrison nodded slowly.
That explains some of your tactical knowledge. Chen's work on supply chain optimization has been influential throughout the military, but even exposure to his expertise wouldn't account for the practical competence you demonstrated today.
Sarah knew she had reached the moment where complete honesty was unavoidable. Her partial revelation had satisfied some questions, but had inevitably led to others that would require her to reveal the full truth.
Sir, there's additional family background that's relevant. My mother is General Patricia Chen.
The silence in the room was profound. All 3 officers stared at Sarah with expressions of surprise and sudden understanding. General Patricia Chen was one of the most respected 4-star generals in the military.
known for her exceptional leadership and strategic brilliance. Lieutenant Colonel Patterson was the first to speak.
General Patricia Chen is your mother? Yes, sir. And this isn't reflected in your personnel file because General Chen made the decision that my military career should be separate from her influence, sir.
She wanted me to earn my place through merit alone, without the advantages or complications that her rank might create. Captain Williams leaned back in his chair, pieces of a puzzle suddenly falling into place. That's why you seem so comfortable around senior officers. You've been around military leadership your entire life.
Yes, sir. Colonel Morrison had been quiet during this exchange, but now he spoke with authority. Lieutenant, I know your mother professionally. She's an exceptional officer and an honorable person. If she made the decision to keep your career separate from her influence, I respect that choice. But this situation has become more complicated than a simple career decision.
How so, sir? Your performance today was exceptional enough that it's going to attract attention beyond this base.
Major Thompson's commendation will go up the chain of command, and your tactical coordination will be reviewed by senior staff. Your relationship to General Chen is going to become known regardless of your family's preferences.
Sarah felt a sinking sensation in her stomach. She had worked so hard to establish herself independently, and now the very competence she had developed through her family background was going to expose the secret she had tried to protect.
Lieutenant Colonel Patterson seemed to understand her concern. Lieutenant, let me be clear about something.
Your performance today was exceptional by any standard. Your family background may have provided you with knowledge and exposure, but knowledge and competence under pressure are different things. You earned the success of today's operation through your own skills and decision-making.
Thank you, sir. However, we now face a complex situation. Your capabilities significantly exceed your rank and official experience level.
Your family background creates both opportunities and potential complications. And your performance today is going to generate attention that will make continued anonymity impossible.
Captain Williams added, there's also the practical consideration of how to best utilize your abilities. Today's operation demonstrated that you have tactical coordination skills that could benefit larger operations and more complex missions.
Sarah understood the implications of what they were discussing. Her carefully planned path through the military hierarchy was about to be dramatically accelerated, whether she wanted it or not.
Colonel Morrison stood up and moved to the window looking out at the base.
Lieutenant, I'm going to be direct with you. Your tactical performance today was at the level of officers with years of field experience. Your family background explains some of your knowledge, but not your competence under pressure. That came from your own abilities? He turned back to face her. Given what we now know about your capabilities and background, keeping you in a standard lieutenant position would be a waste of your talents and potentially harmful to military effectiveness.
I'm not a dad sitting beside Pam's butt and missing bystanders. This is the book, which is about history, not the defensive passage.
What are you suggesting, sir? Lieutenant Colonel Patterson answered. We're suggesting that your military career is about to change significantly.
Your performance today will be reviewed by senior command, and your capabilities will be recognized at much higher levels than this base.
Sarah realized that the quiet, anonymous military career she had planned was ending before it had really begun. Her exceptional performance under pressure had revealed not just her competence, but had made her current position unsustainable.
What happens next, sir? Next, we make some phone calls to people who need to know about today's operation and about your actual capabilities. And then we discuss what kind of assignments and responsibilities would make the best use of your talents.
As Sarah left Lieutenant Colonel Patterson's office 20 minutes later, she understood that everything was about to change. Her secret was out, her exceptional competence was known, and her future would be shaped by factors completely different from what she had planned.
The quiet lieutenant who had spent 3 weeks trying to remain anonymous was about to become the center of attention from senior military leadership, and there was no going back to the anonymity she had carefully tried to maintain. Sarah returned to her desk in the logistics department with her mind reeling from the conversation in Lieutenant Colonel Patterson's office.
She tried to focus on routine paperwork, but concentration was impossible. Every few minutes, she found herself staring at her computer screen without seeing the data displayed there, her thoughts consumed by the implications of what had just occurred. Lieutenant Martinez approached her desk around 4 o'clock, his expression curious and slightly concerned.
Hey, Chen, everything okay?
You've been staring at that same report for the last hour. Sarah looked up, realizing she hadn't processed a single word of the logistics summary she'd been supposedly reviewing.
Just thinking about the convoy operation.
That
was incredible work today, Martinez said, settling into the chair beside her desk. I mean, seriously impressive.
I heard Lieutenant Colonel Patterson specifically requested to speak with you about it.
Yes, he did. Martinez waited for her to elaborate, but when Sarah remained silent, he continued.
Look, I know I've been curious about your background, but after watching you today, I've got to ask directly. Where did you learn to do tactical coordination like that? That wasn't basic academy training. Before Sarah could formulate a response, Sergeant Williams appeared at her desk, holding a message slip. His expression was unusually formal, and he seemed slightly nervous. Lieutenant Chen, I have a message for you from Lieutenant Colonel Patterson's office. You're requested to report to the main conference room immediately.
Sarah felt her stomach clench.
Did he say why? No, ma'am, but... Sergeant Williams glanced around nervously. There are several senior officers in the conference room. More than I've ever seen for a single meeting. Martinez whistled low. Senior officers? What's going on? Sarah gathered her things, her mind racing with possibilities. Lieutenant Colonel Patterson had mentioned that her performance would attract attention, but she hadn't expected immediate escalation to a formal meeting with multiple senior officers. As she walked toward the main conference room, Sarah noticed increased activity throughout the building. Other officers and enlisted personnel seemed to be moving with unusual purpose, and there were more uniforms in the hallways than typical for late afternoon. When she reached the conference room, she paused outside the door to collect herself. Through the window, she could see several officers seated around the large conference table, but the angle prevented her from identifying specific individuals or counting how many were present. Sarah knocked firmly on the door. "Enter," came the response from inside. She opened the door and stepped into the conference room, immediately coming to attention as she surveyed the scene before her. What she saw took her breath away. Seated around the conference table were 4 full colonels, including Colonel Morrison from the earlier meeting. Also present were Lieutenant Colonel Patterson, Major Rodriguez, and Captain Williams. At the head of the table sat a 1-star general she didn't recognize, whose nameplate read Brigadier General Thompson. Lieutenant Chen, Brigadier General Thompson said, "Please have a seat." Sarah sat in the indicated chair, acutely aware that she was the focus of attention from more senior military leadership than she had ever faced simultaneously. The combined rank in the room represented decades of military experience and authority that could fundamentally shape her career with a few words. Brigadier General Thompson consulted a folder in front of him. "Lieutenant, I've been briefed on your performance during today's convoy operation. Major Thompson, the convoy commander, has submitted a commendation describing your tactical coordination as exceptional and potentially life-saving."
Thank you, sir. I've also been briefed on your family background and the unique circumstances of your military service. Sarah noticed that all the officers in the room were watching her carefully, their expressions serious but not hostile. She sensed this was a crossroads moment that would determine her future military path.
"Sir, I want to emphasize that my performance today reflected my own capabilities and decision-making, regardless of my family background." One of the colonels, whose nameplate read Colonel Andrews, leaned forward. "Lieutenant, no one is questioning your individual competence. What we're discussing is how to best utilize exceptional talent within the military structure." Brigadier General Thompson nodded. "Lieutenant Chen, your tactical coordination today was reviewed by senior staff at division level. The consensus is that your capabilities significantly exceed your current assignment and rank." Sarah felt a mixture of pride and anxiety. Recognition of her abilities was gratifying, but she sensed that this level of attention would fundamentally change her military experience.
What does that mean, sir?
Colonel Morrison, who had been present during her earlier questioning, spoke up.
It means we're facing an unusual situation.
Your demonstrated capabilities suggest you could effectively handle responsibilities typically assigned to much more senior officers. Another colonel, identified as Colonel Richards, added, "Your family background provides context for your knowledge base, but your performance under pressure indicates genuine tactical competence that goes beyond academic preparation."
They said you could effectively handle responsibilities. To control the change of capables suggest you could effectively handle responser indicates genuine tactical competence that goes beyond academic preparation.
Brigadier General Thompson opened the folder in front of him. "Lieutenant, I've been in communication with senior command regarding your situation. There are several options we need to discuss." Sarah waited, sensing that her future was about to be determined by decisions made in this room. "Option 1 is accelerated promotion and advanced assignment. Your tactical skills could be immediately utilized in positions that typically require years of additional experience." Option 2, Colonel Andrews continued, is specialized training and assignment to tactical coordination roles where your skills can be developed and utilized appropriately. Colonel Richards added, Option 3 involves liaison work with strategic planning units where your family background and tactical competence could provide unique value. Sarah listened carefully,
understanding that each option would take her military career in a dramatically different direction from what she had originally planned.
Sir, may I ask what recommendations Senior Command has made?
Brigadier General Thompson smiled slightly. Actually, Lieutenant, Senior Command has made an unusual request. They want to meet with you directly to discuss your capabilities and potential assignments. Sarah felt her pulse quicken.
Senior Command wants to meet with me? Yes. Your performance today, combined with your background and demonstrated capabilities, has generated interest at the highest levels of military leadership.
Lieutenant Colonel Patterson, who had been quiet during most of the meeting, spoke up.
Lieutenant, I want you to understand what's happening here.
In 15 years of military service, I've never seen a single operation generate this level of immediate attention from Senior Command. Colonel Morrison nodded. Your tactical coordination was exceptional, but more than that, it demonstrated exactly the kind of strategic thinking and practical competence that senior leadership is always seeking.
Brigadier General Thompson consulted his folder again. Lieutenant Chen, you're being requested to report to Pentagon headquarters tomorrow morning for meetings with senior strategic planning staff.
Sarah felt the room spinning slightly as she processed this information. In less than 24 hours, she had gone from anonymous lieutenant to the subject of Pentagon-level attention.
Sir, what about my current assignment?
Your current assignment is being transferred. As of tomorrow, you'll be assigned to strategic planning coordination pending the outcome of your Pentagon meetings.
Colonel Andrews leaned forward. Lieutenant, I want to be clear about something. This level of recognition and opportunity is unprecedented for an officer at your rank and experience level.
Your performance has opened doors that typically take years to access. Sarah understood the implications. Her careful plan for gradual advancement through normal military channels had been completely bypassed by a single day of exceptional performance.
What should I expect from the Pentagon meeting, sir? You'll be meeting with senior staff who are interested in your tactical competence and strategic thinking abilities. Brigadier General Thompson replied,
They'll assess your potential for advanced assignments and specialized roles.
Colonel Richards added, Lieutenant, you should also expect questions about your family background and how it has influenced your military development. Senior Command is aware of your relationship to General Chen, and they'll want to understand how that background contributes to your capabilities.
Sarah realized that her mother's decision to keep their relationship separate from her military career had ultimately proven impossible to maintain. Her own competence had made the connection inevitable. Will General Chen be involved in these meetings? That will depend on the specific assignments and roles under discussion, Brigadier General Thompson said. But Lieutenant, your mother's reputation and your demonstrated abilities create opportunities that would benefit both your career and military effectiveness. Lieutenant Colonel Patterson addressed her directly.
Chen, I know this is a dramatic change from what you expected when you arrived here 3 weeks ago.
But exceptional performance creates exceptional opportunities. Captain Williams, who had supervised her daily work, added, Your tactical skills and strategic thinking are exactly what the military needs in senior coordination roles. This isn't just recognition of your abilities, it's recognition that those abilities can serve larger purposes. Brigadier General Thompson closed his folder and looked directly at Sarah.
Lieutenant Chen, you have a choice to make. You can accept advanced assignment and accelerated career development, with all the opportunities and pressures that involves. Or you can request to continue with standard career progression, though I should note that your demonstrated capabilities make that less likely to satisfy your potential or military needs.
You've played best builds in military.
Sarah understood that she was being offered opportunities that most officers would consider the pinnacle of their careers, but she also understood that accepting meant abandoning the quiet, gradual career path she had originally planned.
Sir, may I have some time to consider these options? You have until tomorrow morning, Brigadier General Thompson replied.
Your transportation to the Pentagon has already been arranged, and senior staff are expecting to meet with you regardless of which option you choose. As the meeting concluded and the senior officers began to file out, Sarah remained seated, trying to process the magnitude of what had just occurred.
Colonel Morrison paused beside her chair. Lieutenant, exceptional ability creates exceptional responsibility.
Your performance today demonstrated that you have the skills to serve at levels that can genuinely impact military effectiveness and potentially save lives. That's both an opportunity and an obligation. After the conference room emptied, Sarah sat alone, staring at the table where her future had just been determined by officers whose combined experience and authority represented the highest levels of military leadership. She thought about her mother, who had built her career through decades of dedicated service, always knowing that exceptional performance would inevitably lead to exceptional responsibility.
She thought about her father, whose strategic expertise had influenced military planning for years behind the scenes.
And she thought about the convoy operation where her capabilities had potentially saved lives and ensured mission success. The quiet lieutenant who had tried to remain anonymous was about to face the Pentagon and senior military leadership, not because of her family background, but because of her own demonstrated competence under pressure. Tomorrow would bring meetings that could reshape her entire military career, and there was no going back to the anonymity she had worked so hard to maintain. The 4 colonels who had sat in judgment of her capabilities had opened doors to opportunities she had never imagined, and now she would have to decide whether she was ready to walk through them.